Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, and I am here with my guest co-host today.
Keith Singer.
Yes, hi Keith. So
Hello.
Keith Singer is my co-host today, and my mom is not here, Gloria Horsley. And Keith and I have known each other for a very long time, so I'm in good hands.
Absolutely.
Keith, you basically do, I think, one of the biggest workshops at Compassionate Friends, and it is for parents, right?
Yep. It's a sibling panel where we have a number of siblings, surviving siblings, and it's an opportunity for parents to sort of ask questions and sort of get a peek into what's going on in their surviving child's minds.
Right, so this is really important because this show today is called Sibling Grief, What Parents Really Need to Know. And it is the very first show we have ever done for parents about sibling loss. So please stay tuned and listen to what our panel has to say today, because they are experts in all of this, because they are bereaved siblings and have walked the walk and talked the talk, as is Keith. Keith's sister Lori died in a car accident, and she was active in the Navy. At the time, and like I said, he speaks a lot at Compassionate Friends, runs a lot of workshops, and is very involved in the Staten Island chapter with the sibling program. So let me introduce everybody else, Keith. Right here, we have Kevin Bartini. Kevin is a stand-up comic in New York City, and his brother Andrew died in a car accident. Next to him is his friend and another stand-up, Jordon Ferber.
Woohoo.
Jordon has been on the show numerous times. And his brother Russell also died in a car accident. And he, like I said, does stand-up comedy also, and he does a lot with Compassionate Friends. You run the sibling group in
I run the sibling group in Manhattan, and I'm co-chapter leader of the Manhattan chapter as well.
Yes, and he speaks a lot and keynotes a lot at Compassionate Friends, as does Keith. And next to him is Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, and Jason has Shine Yoga. He does personal yoga in his house, and he is a yogi. He also does workshops for sibling loss. His sister Lauren died in a car accident, and you also do doTERRA.
Yes, doTERRA
right?
essential oils. It's been one of a really important part of my kind of healing process as well.
So he's very involved in the oils and yoga, which we love. And next to him is Mary Kate, our single female on this panel. Mary Kate Boylan, and your brother is Sean, and he died of an accidental drowning. And you are a producer with the nightly news, right, at CBS?
CBS Evening News, yeah.
The CBS Evening News producer, okay. Okay, there we go, Keith.
There we go.
So what questions do we want to start with? I mean, what kind of questions do you get from parents on your panel? And we can ask these guys.
So I think the biggest one is they want to kind of know what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They want to know how if they're dealing with the grief. I think their expectations often get a little skewed, where they feel like all of a sudden they're going to have this big open relationship where they're going to start talking and sharing feelings, and then when they're not, it's sort of they get this anxiety and angst about which sort of has a big impact on the relationship, and obviously can cause a lot of stress in the house.
That's what I hear too. I hear parents saying, "Why aren't my kids talking to me and grieving with me?"
Sure.
So does anyone on the panel want to answer this?
If you don't mind me
Yes.
starting, yeah. I remember when when Lauren first passed, everybody would come up to me and say, "You have to be strong for your parents. You have to be strong for your parents." And it was almost like a mantra that everybody kept telling me. And how can you be strong for your parents and then be vulnerable with them? And they can like to see you get upset and see you get really down in the dumps. So it's a dual message that that I was getting as a son, that I have to be strong for my parents, and that's the way I had to be strong, is really just not to show how I was dealing with the loss of my sister.
I think that also then creates the anxiety for the parents to say, well, they're not, I don't see them grieving and I don't see them dealing with it. I think that creates that fear, and that
worries me, because what if something's wrong and I don't know it?
Right. Or they're not dealing with it in the right way, and maybe they're going to start doing, they're going to worry about maybe they're worrying about losing us.
Right. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think there's a lot of variables. First of all, everybody deals with grief differently.
Yeah.
When you're talking about siblings, first of all, we're talking about age, of the sibling. When in the timeline is this? Are these parents asking you questions and they're 2 months down the road? I'm 20. My brother's been gone 20 years. He's been dead longer than he was alive. But thinking back to the very beginning, those first months, I didn't share, I guess, with my parents or with anyone else. My own personal thing was, we were in a small town, is where I grew up, and I felt like it was almost a stigma. Like I became known as the kid with the dead brother.
Yeah.
And everybody, it's awkward. When they see you, do they bring it up? Do they not bring it up? You know, it's the elephant in the room. And when I was back home, I mean, my brother was the topic of conversation constantly and everything else. So for me, personally, I retreated. It was, you know, a year later, I moved to New York City. I needed space from it. I needed to not be known as the guy with the dead kid brother. Yeah. And I needed time to not focus on that. And so is a way of saying, yeah, when I was at the dinner table with my parents, that's not the topic that I would bring up of conversation, because I was sick of hearing it and talking about it and being just covered in it. It was my job to, I don't know, figure out how I was going to become a man in this world and strike out on my own. And
I can identify with a lot of that, except for the man part.
Yeah.
Because I was 20.
Yeah.
And I definitely understand what you're saying. I needed to live like a 20-year-old also, and have that life. And I sometimes felt consumed and engulfed with my parents' life. And so I moved from New York to California.
Yeah.
A year after my brother died, so that I could get some distance.
Some distance.
For the same reason that you're saying.
Yeah, moving away was a huge part of the healing process. I mean, there's another thing is the reason I moved was I felt his absence much more in my hometown, in my parents' house, in the car. When I would be somewhere and know for 100% certainty he would be here right now.
Right.
It's much more. So I never had that when I walked along the Upper West Side, because we never shared that. He came to New York City once, you know, on a little trip. So I was able to get away from that, and I didn't have that
constant reminder.
I didn't have that weight on me, and that was just a big part. So I think for young people, in my experience, is
give them space.
Just space.
I think that's good for parents out there that are going to watch this. What about you, Mary Kate? What are your thoughts about this?
I guess I just think it's about, like, I try to be as open as possible with my mom when I'm struggling, so that she feels comfortable being like, so it's a two-way open communication thing, because I feel like boundaries are kind of a little bit broken down inherently when something like this happens, because you're all seeing each other super vulnerable. So if one of my brothers is upset or my mom's upset, like, I just let them live in that and not try to make them think that they need to seem better, because I want to be able to have that.
Are you able to grieve openly in front of them too? It sounds like you are.
Yeah, it definitely took work.
Yeah.
And
I was asked, is it always that way? Were you always open from the very beginning?
I think it takes thinking. Like, inherently you want to comfort someone and make them stop crying. But in this case, it's not like a little thing. They need to keep crying, that kind of thing. And it just takes being super, like, in the moment and aware of the way you're reacting, kind of.
I know I always tell parents to give space and time. It feels like parents get overly protective and overly clingy. I think at a time when we need more space and more and even time to kind of learn how to deal with and adjust to this new lifestyle and not have to deal with the pressure of helping them deal with it or watching them deal with the loss.
I think that's true. I think that's an interesting reaction that parents have with their surviving children, is to be more protective or just more worried. I mean, to this day, every time I drive home from my parents' house back to New York City, my father is warning. My father will warn me about the dangers of black ice in the middle of July. It's just he's always super focused on what could take me out next. What
he's lost a child and he's afraid.
Yeah, the
reality is that children can die.
Yeah, and he said he's like the idea of losing me or my sister or one of his grandkids. He goes that. He couldn't do it again. So they're very protective. And
What about you?
I think,
Jordon?
To what Mary Kay was saying also about, I think it is important to have open communication with them, to find that balance, to be able to have your own space, but also to be able to give the other the space that they need. I think it really magnified my relationship with my parents. The relationship that I had with them prior to Russell's death was the same relationship that I had after. But it's sort of evolved and it's changed. And one of the things that I always say is that we all know that our own parents are crazy people, and surprise, surprise, this experience did not fix them. So they're still crazy. It sort of magnified our relationship to a point. So what used to be 50% of the attention now feels like 150% of attention. There's the balance is off,
right?
And so we really had to work at working with each other to find the right balance, to not be able to not step on each other's toes. I remember that first year and a half after Russell died, I was still living with my parents, and it felt like I was 10 years old again.
Yeah.
I felt like they wanted to hold my hand crossing the street. They wanted to know where I was 24 hours a day, and if you didn't call and check in at a certain point, there was definitely that tendency you'd get a frantic phone call at 8 o'clock at night. Where are you? So I think it took some time for them to understand the space that I needed, and it took time for me to understand what they needed from me in order to feel comfortable with a little bit of that space between us.
I think for a lot of parents that are asking me, well, how come I don't have that relationship with my child? I would tell you time. I think it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. It's going to take time for your child to kind of get into a place where they're comfortable and able to see their parents in pain. I think that's a big thing that we had to adjust to is being able to deal with when they cry and they get upset. I think the natural reaction is for us is just to run and not have to deal and see that. So I think definitely time is something that parents should definitely.
I agree with you. And the other thing I'm always telling parents, and I know it's really hard for parents at the beginning because they've lost their children, but try not to say that life is no longer worth living.
Right, sure.
And there's no reason to be here anymore. Because then sometimes people think, we're not enough.
Right.
And so I don't know if that has ever come up with any of you guys. It sounds like it might not have, I don't know.
I feel like my parents directly asked me that in the beginning. They started going to compassionate friends and seeking out support very early on, and they were, I think, immediately struck by families who went out of their way to create shrines or big displays for the child that had died and had no equivalent for the child that was still there. So it felt like they were putting all of their attention on somebody who was no longer there and not on the person that was still in front of them. And I think my parents were very hyper aware of that. They've always been in my corner and the first to champion me when in the same breath as they
I like that. So they don't just focus on your brother Russell.
Right.
They're able to focus on you as well. Do you all feel that way pretty much? Or do you feel like there was a lot of attention initially given to the sibling that died?
Yeah, so I was going to say, like Keith said, sometimes it just takes time. So I feel in the beginning, I was a little bit, to protect my parents from seeing me grieve, I was definitely back. But then once I was able to get a better handle on it for myself, I was then able to approach them. And there's still little components of Lauren that still hang up, but we're creating new memories and we're going on trips together and stuff like that. And so we're both my parents and I are making a point to create these new memories together that are completely separate from the past. And we always feel that Lauren's with us anyway, but at least there are these new memories that we create. So time really does do a whole lot just for everybody to get a handle on their own stuff.
What about the idea, the child that died has now been elevated to the status of God? They have never done anything. They haven't done anything wrong, and that they can't. That it's hard for parents to see that person as a real person. I mean, our siblings were great, but we knew stuff about them our parents didn't even know. I mean, we fought with them, we loved them. It's complicated.
There's some of us that still know things that our parents don't know.
It's complicated, right? That's the sibling relationship.
I don't know that was something that's exclusive to parents. That was something that super annoyed me. Not just with my brother's death, but with anybody's death.
Yeah.
It's everybody around that, it's so cliche. They had the greatest smile. They had all the crap. It's like, they never did wrong.
Right.
And the thing is, like, a big part of my brother's personality was, he had a very cutting sense of humor. And you didn't have a lot of empathy in his sense of humor. And I remember him getting annoyed. Of course, he died in the late 90s, but he used to get annoyed all the time whenever, during the O.J. Simpson time, Ron Goldman's father, the poor man who lost his kid, was always on camera with the big walrus mustache and blubbering, and something about that guy annoyed my brother. That he was like, to my brother, that this guy was a one-trick pony, and this is all he ever talked about and everything. And then the irony is that he never got to see that's what my father became when my brother died. How
interesting.
He never got to see that kind of thing. And he would make jokes and things like that were hilarious. But the minute he died, nobody would ever talk about that stuff anymore. It was, he was the kindest, sweetest person. And some of the stuff people would say, it's like, yeah, he was a nice guy, he was a good guy, but just because you die, you don't become a saint.
Right.
You don't. And that doesn't do a service to the person who died. That was who they are. That's their personality, for good, for bad, or for in between. And you're rewriting their life and their history and their narrative just to suit your own, weren't they a saint kind of thing. So it really annoys me.
I feel like the way Russell bent the rules was the most interesting thing about him.
Yeah.
I think he was, I often say he was the type of person that asked for forgiveness, not permission, and very often not even forgiveness. He would do what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I think that we look back on some of those times and laugh the most at the stuff that was probably the hardest to deal with while he was around,
But I think that's what keeps them real versus just this two bullet points that they were, everything was perfect, sweetest person, would help anybody, but what really made them real in their memories is not just, those 3 bullet points that everybody likes, the cliche likes to talk about, but the real, them getting into trouble, sneaking out,
smoking in the bathroom, blowing the smoke out.
Well, that's why. Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm so glad now that when I die, and people say all that stuff, there's my Facebook page. You can see what son of a bitch I really was. It's all laid out there for you. Do the research.
Yeah, so I think we hear that a lot from siblings that it is a big complaint that they feel like that their sibling have to compete with this sibling that's now become elevated to this angel status of
and then
perfect.
it makes you feel like the wrong child died. And I actually did think that because my parents have 3 girls and 1 boy, and my brother was the athlete, and he was kind of a larger than life guy, and he died, and I was just average at everything I did. So I was like, oh my God, wait, is this some cruel joke? I should have died. And it's hard. It took me a long time to work through that, to realize that my parents would have been sad regardless.
Right. But it is big. I'll tell you, it's big in sibling. A lot of siblings do feel that. I hear that a lot to try to get that out of their mind where they feel like it should have been them.
Well, that's that's survivor's guilt 101.
Right.
It
Exactly.
Should be why did the other 5 people in the car die and I survived? Why? But look at you. You said it happened when you were about 20.
Yes.
And it happened when I was about 20, and I had the same feelings, but. Look what you did with it. It motivated you to become a professor at Columbia. It motivated me to become a comedian and to do all these different things that I've done and I've accomplished. And when you look at it on paper, big time. Big time. All that stuff. If you look at it on paper, and you had your pick, who should have been wiped out on paper. It should have been me.
Right. That's
motivated me to be a better me and a better version of me.
I like this idea
because
and
instead of wallowing in it.
Yes, and I know Mary Kate, your brother was like a big football person in college.
Yes.
And do you feel that like that as well, or do you feel like we've done kind of what you've done in a sense, because Sean, to honor Sean and because he did die? Or?
Oh, I definitely think about Sean constantly in the way that I treat people or the things that I try to strive to be that I probably wasn't before. Sean's a lot more fun than me, so I try to be more fun. Sean,
See, that's interesting. So you try to be more fun.
Yeah.
There's things that he did that you try now to do.
Right. Yeah, because if people aren't getting to experience that in their day-to-day,
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of try to carry things that
I like that
can.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and Sean, loved his friends more than like anything, so I just lean on my friends more than maybe I would have before, and so yeah, definitely
So
try
I think it's important for parents out there to realize that we try to fill some of the voids, too, that our sibling left. I know that I've definitely done that. And my sister had a child and named him after my brother, and we're all trying to fill parts of that, but there's some things that you can never fill.
And I think sometimes, I know for me, it was also a motivating factor to be fearless and to maybe do things. And so from a parental perspective, they may look at it as being like foolish or not thinking things through very clearly. But in fact, it's all about, we know how quickly things can go. And if we don't do it now, like, what are you waiting for? So like those behaviors can seem a little bit not fully thought through, but they are fully thought through.
So I'm wondering, what do you guys feel that parents do? What can parents do? I don't know if I'm saying this right. Keith, help me. What's advice for parents? What are the things that they should do, right?
Right, to sort of help bridge the gap between I think the big important thing is communication. Like what can parents do to sort of open the door to their surviving children?
Yes.
Because I think that's a big key issue is communication between and getting their surviving child to open up, right? So I think some of it is time, but was there anything that maybe your parents did to sort of open the door to communication?
Anything that you liked and would tell parents out there and didn't like? Yeah, would tell parents out there. I mean, I can start. I didn't like the fact that my father would kind of look at me as his therapist, because I wasn't a therapist then, by the way. I wasn't even thinking I would never have gone into this field. He would sit with me for like 2 hours and talk about my brother, and I felt obligated to sit there because I felt like a child loss was so horrible, because I was given all these messages, the worst loss that can happen is, the death of a child from society. So I felt like I had to kind of put my own life on hold and listen to him all the time, and it was really draining. So I don't know if you guys, I would tell parents out there, don't do that.
I think an important word for a parent to remember is boundaries.
Yeah.
And because it works both ways. It's have the boundary to understand that maybe your child doesn't want to talk about this constantly. Doesn't want, needs some time to just be alone, to just to be himself, to be, to forget about it. But on the other side of it, there's that other boundary is don't spend all your time building that other sibling up into this deity figure that now the other sibling is feeling inconsequential or less than.
Sure.
If you didn't have a relationship the day before this tragedy where your child would come home after school and have some milk and cookies and say about the kid who hurt his feelings, then why, that never happened when I was growing up. Why would you expect now that we're going to start sharing our feelings? This isn't an episode of Family Ties. This is our life.
Right.
I like that, Kevin. That's good.
It doesn't all change.
So Jordon, what is your final remark for parents out there?
I think communication is always the key. I think, being open about where you're at and what you need, as hard as that is to come to terms with right after a tragedy like this, I think eventually you have to have that conversation. And I think it is important to have those boundaries, it was important for me to understand that my parents needed to know where I was, but it was also important for them to know that I didn't need them to hold my hand across the street anymore. Like it was a little bit too much. Right. So I think that it took time for us to sort of figure out what our new dynamic was, to figure out what that balance was, so that we could not push each other away while the other was trying to hold us closer. Right.
And I would say the biggest thing is trust that your kids are doing what they need for themselves. Like, we're adults, we grieve in our own way. Everyone grieves differently, and we're no different. So you really just need to trust that your child is grieving in the way that is right for them, and to give them the space to do that, as well as being, communicative with them, but
Sure.
but backing off where needed.
Not even, and sometimes they're not adults.
Yeah.
So sometimes, right? I don't think it's just for an adult. Sometimes
Yeah.
children also they're feeling that pressure. Talking to a lot of siblings, younger siblings, they
Yeah.
feel the same pressure.
Gotcha.
So it's not just for adults.
Thank you.
Just being comfortable with everyone's processes, and obviously everything's changed, and just being comfortable with wherever everyone is in that, I feel like.
I like that. Sometimes that can be hard, and I like that because families get in trouble when they can't be comfortable.
I think I often tell parents to try to open the door to communication, but be patient and give time. If they're not ready, then don't push it. But just let the child know, let your child know that you're ready when you're there when they're ready. But I think don't be over persistent, because that's when it causes a lot of that anger and stress from when your parents are overbearing and on top of you.
Totally. And the more you sit there and try to force your kids to open up, the more they're going to
Retreat.
shut down.
Sure.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times, chances are they have found somebody that they're talking to, and they're or just even they're internally just trying to learn to process it themselves. They're just sometimes you just need that time to kind of figure it out until you're ready.
I like that. So I want to end with where people can get in touch with you, and I want Keith you to talk about where people can get a hold of the Facebook. How
Sure.
can they join the Facebook page Siblings out there?
Sure. So Sounds of the Siblings, it's a private group on Facebook. Yep, and
Okay.
TCF conferences, or Staten Island chapter of TCF.
Okay, very good. And Kevin, where do people find you?
KevinBartini.com.
KevinBartini.com. Jordon?
Probably the best place to find me is I have a podcast called Where's the Grief?
Yes, where's the grief?
I interview other
You interviewed the
comedians.
person
I've
sitting
had
next to
Kevin
you.
and Heidi on,
Yes.
and Keith actually as well. You guys will probably be on deck. It's not all comedians. I interview other sad people too.
Sure.
And then for me, it's the best place is probably on Facebook. Just find me by my name, Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki. I'm the only one that'll pop up, and then just like me and friend me, and we can connect that way.
Excellent. Mary Kate?
I'm more behind the scenes.
Don't contact her at the CBS News, okay? So yes, if you want to contact any of these people, you can contact me. If you have questions for us, let us know. And I think we're almost out of time now.
Yes.
I'm not sure though.
We thank everybody. Yeah.
But any other parting words, Keith? Any last words?
No, definitely time. Give your children time, and when they're ready, they will come. The communication door, the door will open up.
And like Keith said earlier, just because they're not grieving in front of you doesn't mean they're not grieving.
Right.
You don't see us at night. You don't see us on social media. You don't see us with our friends.
Right.
We might be grieving in the shower or in our car. We miss our siblings tremendously.
Right.
So don't worry about us so much. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for joining us. Please visit us on opentohope.com, and you'll be able to see many sibling stories like this, and watch shows and watch podcasts. And I want to thank my co-host Keith Singer today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And we want you all to know that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. Thank you.